Hey everyone! Today, we're going to untangle 5 really important ideas in company law. But instead of just listing them, we're going to follow the story of a single powerful concept, the corporate veil. It's an idea that creates, protects, and sometimes, even hides a modern business. Let's dive in.
So, just think about this for a second. What if a business could actually be its own person? Not a person like you and me, of course, but a legal person. One that can own stuff, sign contracts, and even show up in court, all totally separate from the people who actually own it. It sounds simple, but that one question right there, it's pretty much the foundation of all modern business law.
So how is this whole separate life thing possible? Well, it happens because of a legal idea that honestly sounds a little bit like magic. It's called the corporate veil, and we're about to see exactly how it works. Okay, so here's the core idea. The second a company is legally created, the law puts up this invisible barrier, this veil, between the company and its owners. Suddenly, in the eyes of the law, they are two completely different things. You've got the company on one side and the shareholders and directors on the other. They are not the same. And this isn't just a theory. It was locked into law way back in 1897. There was this guy, Mr. Salomon, who created a company and sold his own business to it. When things went south, his creditors cried foul, saying the company was just a sham, that it was really just him. But the court said, nope, the company is its own legal person, period. That decision, wow, it changed the game completely. And this is why that veil is so incredibly powerful. It's a shield. If the company gets into a ton of debt, the shareholders' personal stuff, their house, their car, is safe. The company itself owns its own property. And, get this, if the owners all change or even pass away, the company just keeps on going. It's an amazing engine for business and innovation.
Okay, so we've brought this new person into the world. But you can't just let it run wild and do whatever it wants, right? There have to be rules. And that brings us to our next doctrine, which is basically the company's legal leash.
And that leash has a fancy Latin name, ultra vires. It just means beyond the powers. See, every company has a founding document, its Memorandum of Association, or MOA, which is like its mission statement. It says, this is what we were created to do. If the company tries to do something that's not in there, that action is ultra vires, and legally, it's like it never even happened. And the courts are dead serious about this. There's a famous case where a company tried to do something outside its MOA. Even though every single shareholder agreed to it, the court said it didn't matter. The act was void. The company simply wasn't built to do that. It doesn't have the power. So let's connect the dots. The corporate veil is what gives the company its own separate life. But the doctrine of ultra vires immediately puts that new life on a leash, making sure it doesn't wander off and do things it wasn't supposed to. All right, so we have our separate entity, and it's on a leash. But what about us, the outsiders? If you want to do business with this company, how much do you need to know about its rules? Well, this leads to 2 really important doctrines that actually seem to pull in opposite directions. The first rule is, well, a little tough on us. It's called the doctrine of constructive notice. And what it means is that since a company's rule books, its MOA and articles are public, the law just assumes you've read them. So if you sign a deal with a company to do something it's not allowed to do, you can't turn around later and say, oh, I didn't know. The law's response is basically, tough, you should have. Now that sounds pretty unfair, right? I mean, who has time for all that? And that's exactly why the law came up with a counterbalance, the doctrine of indoor management. This one protects the outsider. It says, sure, you should know the public rules, but you can assume all the internal stuff. The indoor business was handled correctly. You don't need to be a detective and check if their board meeting was run properly. So you can see the balance here, right? Constructive notice protects the company, saying you should know its public rules, but indoor management protects you, saying you can assume its private affairs are in order. You can really think of it like this. Constructive notice is the big, strict rule, but indoor management is the essential, common-sense exception that makes business actually work. And now we get to the most dramatic part of the story. What happens when someone uses that corporate veil not as a shield for doing good business, but as a mask to hide something shady? Well, let's just say the courts have a pretty powerful answer for that. It's called the doctrine of alter ego, but you'll almost always hear it called lifting or piercing the corporate veil. In some really specific situations, a court will just ignore the veil completely. They'll look right through it and say, you know what? This company isn't a separate person. It's just the alter ego, the other self of the person controlling it. And just like that, the shield is gone,
and the person behind it is personally on the hook.
So when does this happen? Well, courts don't do it for just any reason. But when we're talking about things like fraud, tax evasion, or someone setting up a complete sham of a company just to get out of a legal obligation, that's when the courts step in. They will look right past the company to the people pulling the strings. A textbook example is the case of Jones v. Lippman. A guy agreed to sell some land, then changed his mind. So to try and wiggle out of the deal, he created a company and moved the land into its name. Then he told the buyer, sorry, can't sell it. The company owns it now. The court saw right through this. They pierced the veil, called the company a mask, and forced the sale to go through. So as we pull this all together, you can see these 5 doctrines aren't just a random list. They're all connected. They tell the complete story of the corporate personality, how it's born, how it's controlled, how we deal with it, and, when necessary, how it's ignored. So here's the quick and dirty recap. The corporate veil makes the company a separate person. Ultravirus keeps that person on a leash. Constructive notice says we have to read its public rulebook, but indoor management says we don't need to snoop on its private meetings. And finally, the alter ego doctrine is when a judge rips the veil away and says the company and its owner are one and the same. Which leaves us with one final question. Is a company a person, a shield, or a mask? And the truth is, it can be any of them. It just depends on the situation. Knowing when it's which, well, that's the key to understanding the entire corporate world. Thanks so much for watching.